Welcome to Sales for Nerds. I'm your host and chief nerd, Ruben Swartz. If you started a business because you love serving clients but realized you didn't like the sales and marketing aspect of running that business so much, this is the podcast for you. Sales and marketing doesn't have to suck. It can actually be a lot of fun. And on this show, we're going to teach you how to connect instead of network, teach instead of market, help instead of sell, so you can keep serving people even while you're building your pipeline and growing your business. Now let's get to it. Today, I'm super excited to have with me Wayne Mullins. He's the founder of Ugly Mug Marketing. What a great name. He's also the author of Full Circle Marketing, Transform Your Marketing and Turn Customers into Evangelists. Wayne, thanks for joining me on Sales for Nerds. I know you don't have anything like I have in my glass, but did you bring anything to sip on while you're here?
I just have my trusted bottle of water with me.
Perfect. And I've got some Para Maria. It's a Syrah Petit Verdot blend from Santa Barbara County, and it is quite delicious. So anyway, Wayne, cheers. Thanks for joining me today. One of the things I like about what you do, well, first of all, there's the name, Ugly Mug Marketing. It actually stands out. You actually remember it. One of the things that I thought marketing was supposed to do for us. And then you also talk about turning your customers into evangelists and marketing that should actually generate results, which sometimes seems also a little blasphemous in certain marketing circles. How did you get to this point? Did you start off thinking you were going to end up in marketing?
I didn't, Ruben. So my story actually began with Zig Ziglar, some Zig Ziglar CDs. For whatever reason, my parents gave me some Zig Ziglar CDs one year for Christmas, and Zig sold me on the profession of selling. So I wanted to go in sales, went into sales, and honestly, Ruben, I was terrible at sales, but I kept at it. I was stubborn. I kept learning, kept knocking on doors, kept having doors slammed in my face. And I got good at this thing called sales. And so I noticed this crazy thing happen, Ruben, and that was that the amount of money I was making for the company was going up at a pretty good climb, and yet my paycheck wasn't quite going up nearly at that same climb. So I had this dangerous idea. What if I actually went and did something for myself? What if I went and sold something for myself? Could I make more money? And the only other skill I had that was marketable was lawn care. So being down here in the South, the lawn care season is about 9 months out of the year. So I went and started a lawn and landscape company. Fast forward 3 years later, I sold that company. Actually had two offers on that company. I sold it in the middle of the winter. And it was during the course of growing that business that other entrepreneurs started coming to me, actually clients of the lawn care company, and they were saying, how are you growing? What are you doing? And marketing was the thing that we did so well. And so I started doing consulting, which eventually turned into, 14 years later, this agency, Ugly Mug Marketing.
Awesome. Well, I want to get deep into that in a second, but I want to go back. How old were you when you got these Zig Ziglar CDs? And for people who don't know what a CD is, it's this plastic platter that stores sound on it.
Yeah. I would guess I was probably 20, 21, maybe.
Okay. So you weren't like
in that range.
8 years old looking for like a toy car and there's Zig Ziglar CDs in there. It was an age appropriate gift.
No, I guess it was age appropriate, but it was still somewhat random. I still need to ask them, like, what led y'all to giving me these Zig Ziglar CDs?
Do you think you got regifted?
Possibly so. I mean, I'm thankful. I'm very thankful at this point that they did that. But yeah, I need to dig into that.
Now you listen to these CDs, you're like, this sounds great. And then you go do it and you say you weren't very good at it. Why do you think you weren't very good at it?
Well, the close ratio and my paycheck would indicate that I wasn't good at it. That's one of the beautiful things I think about sales and marketing really is that we get feedback so rapidly. So for me, I was out knocking on doors. And when you're knocking on doors and you're calling on business owners, you get feedback in real time.
Right.
So the door gets slammed in your face. They tell you leave, don't come back, or they tell you, yeah, I'm interested, but not now. You get all this feedback. And if you're able to begin piecing that information together, you can make changes based on what that feedback is telling you. I think so many, though, we get so emotionally wrapped up in sales and that we're unable to separate the emotion of hearing no and having doors closed in our faces that we can't learn the lessons that are there.
That's so true. And it's like you're getting coached along the way, whether you want to be coached or not. You might as well take the coaching and play better the next day, right?
Absolutely.
So by the time you started your lawn care business, would you say that you were then good at sales?
I would say I was pretty decent at sales at that point. I'd won several awards at my previous company by that point in sales, and I was at the level where next step would have been sales manager for me, and that wasn't really something that I was interested in waiting around on.
Okay. Now, what do you think you did differently when you were sort of this award-winning person towards the end of your career at that company versus when you started and you were struggling with sales? What did you learn along the way?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, I was so wrapped up in trying to convince people of their need for the thing that I offered versus truly just understanding the problems that they faced and then determining if what I offered would fulfill that need or solve that problem that they had. So it was really just this. Dale Carnegie would teach, how to win friends and influence people. It's really learning to understand things from their perspective and go at the relationship from their perspective versus from my own personal perspective.
Sounds like a pretty typical journey that a lot of us have to go through, so I'm told, when we start selling stuff. And you think, gosh, but this would be so helpful to you. Why can't you see it? What's wrong with you? You decide to form Ugly Mug Marketing. How'd you come up with the name?
So the name actually comes from this gentleman by the name of David Ogilvy. So David Ogilvy was the co-founder of this agency called Ogilvy and Mather. Today, Ogilvy and Mather is one of the top 10 marketing agencies in the world. At one point, and for a long period, they were the largest in the world. Well, David had this wonderful quote that was really known just internally for them. And that quote was, "I would rather you show me an ad that's ugly and effective over one that's beautiful but isn't." And in the world that we operate in the marketing, the advertising agency world, so much of what takes place is driven by this desire to win awards, this desire to win most creative or cleverest campaign or best design, whatever it may be. And so from the very beginning, I wanted our North Star, if you will, to be centered around what matters most to our clients, and that is the results. So not that we're opposed to beautiful things, not that we want to design something ugly, but what we would rather is design something that's going to get results over just designing something that's beautiful.
Amen to that. And I've told this story on the podcast before, but if you're a new listener, one of the frustrations I had at one point, I went to go hire somebody to build a website for me, and they put together a beautiful proposal with beautiful mock-ups, all gorgeous stuff. And I had my checkbook. I was ready to write them a big check by my standards. And I just wanted to feel good about doing that. So I said, well, okay, like this all looks good, but why do I want to pay all this money versus say just getting a WordPress theme and putting my own stuff in it? And it wasn't a gotcha question. It was like the softball, like, hey, you must get this all the time. Just reassure me that I'm doing the right thing so I can write the check. And their answer was all about the pixels and the beauty and stuff that didn't matter to me at all. And I was like, what is going on here? You're asking me for 5 figures of money and you don't have a good answer for me that relates in any way to my business, which is one of the things that when I came across Ugly Mug, I was like, oh, the focus on results. This is exactly what I want. Because if they had said, hey, because we're doing it this way, you're going to make more money, I would have been all over it. Instead of because we're doing it this way, you have this custom, unique design. And I was like, I don't care about that. Right? Like it just doesn't matter to me. I'm not out there trying to win an award for a unique website. I'm trying to get a website to get me business.
Yeah.
Now, how did you get your first clients for Ugly Mug? Were these folks that you were talking to from the landscaping business?
They were. Yeah. So I began just literally with actual lawn care companies. So we dealt primarily with commercial clients. And so they saw the growth of the lawn care company and they began asking me, what are you doing? And so it originally started with just those owners or the managers of those companies. And then from there, it was just kind of word of mouth began spreading that, I had these unique ideas around marketing and around sales and around service. And, one thing led to another. And then I finally was like, you know what? I should probably put a fee behind this since the other business is now gone. I need to do something to earn money. So that's how it led.
And what were they asking you to do?
The original question just simply came from, what are you doing to grow so quickly? It was very visible, when you start out with just you in this company, right? And then over the course of a 3-year period, you have multiple crews and multiple vehicles and you're managing all of the biggest accounts in town. It's just a very visible transformation. And so literally the first conversations would say, how are you growing your business so quickly? What are you doing to grow? And always at the core of that, marketing was the big piece. Marketing was what we were doing that was so different than our competitors were doing. And that's what began these conversations.
Okay. So what were you doing differently?
Some common sense stuff, Ruben, that, I see this over and over even today, right? We live in this world where everyone wants to learn the latest hack or the latest social media platform.
Mm-hmm.
They want to learn the next thing where their video is going to go viral or whatever it may be. And while they're busy doing all those things, trying to learn how to hack the system, if instead they'd just taken some of that time and attention and done some of these fundamental or focused on these fundamental things that we all know at the end of the day work. So specific examples would be, we were going after commercial businesses. And so every single Friday, I would go to a local donut shop and I'd literally buy dozens of boxes of dozens of donuts. And we had these great labels that would fit across the entire top of the box of donuts. So when we'd bring the box of donuts in, the sides would still say where they came from, the donut shop, but the top was covered with our logo and our phone number. Now, here's the interesting thing, Ruben. I didn't go in and ask for the business owner. I didn't go in and ask for the decision maker at those businesses. I would go in, like restaurants were a lot of our clients were restaurants. So I would go in early in the morning on Fridays through the kitchen door where all the staff was back there prepping for the lunch crowd that day. And I would just say, hey, Wayne, local lawn care company, I know y'all are busy. Don't want to interrupt you. Just brought y'all some donuts by. Just want to say, hey, appreciate what you do. That was it. Leave. And so I had this rotation. So I would be back a month later, same place, walk in, same pitch. And so over time, what would happen is the manager would come in or the owner would come in and they would complain about the way the lawn looked outside. And they would say, have any of y'all seen the lawn care people? Like the yard looks terrible. The grass looks terrible. And they would say, no, but there's this other company that comes by all the time and brings us food. Maybe you should call them. And so it was little things like this. That's just one example of it would take a half a day on a Friday, but I built relationships. I built evangelists inside the businesses that I wanted to do business with. So I never had to sell, right? So the staff sold for me. I didn't have to go in and try to convince them to switch companies. The staff did it on my behalf.
So first of all, it's interesting because I would think, gosh, they're in a restaurant. The last thing they want is more food, but who doesn't like free donuts, right? Like it's just one of those human things that free donuts show up and it's like a pack of hyenas at the donut box. And then did you prioritize like, oh, this restaurant has really crappy lawn. Let me drop donuts off here. Or was it just kind of random? How did you figure out which businesses should get because even with dozens of boxes, like there's only so many businesses you can drop off at, right?
Correct. So I actually had a list of my top 100 clients that I wanted to work with. And it was from that list, I just rotated through and would visit those and drop off in that order. And so they were on a weekly rotation and I'd just come back through. So again, it wasn't just random. I didn't just go out and say, today I'm gonna drive down this street and go in every business. I knew which ones had lawns that were visible, lawns that they cared about the way they looked.
Mm-hmm.
Size would matter. So I would call on ones with certain size of account. So yeah, it was very systematic. It wasn't just like, I'm gonna wake up today and, I feel like I need to go give some donuts away. So I'm gonna go knock on some doors. It's very systematic.
So how long would you say it took you to create that top 100 list?
The list itself was easy. I mean, you get in a vehicle in that business, you drive around, it doesn't take you long to figure out based on territory, based on size of the lawn or the space they've got, based on the size of the organization, based on, if they're public facing, in other words, are customers coming in their door versus is it wholesale only, maybe a big warehouse where they don't care as much about the way the lawn looks. So it was very easy to put that together.
Because I love that strategy. And I hear a lot of people saying, gosh, I wish I had a list of my top 100 prospects, but I don't have time to make it. And for a lot of people, especially if you have a geographic constraint, you can literally drive around town and put that list together in an afternoon. Or if you don't, you can probably do it on the internet in an afternoon. And it doesn't have to be a perfect list, right? Like this isn't like the Rolling Stone top 100 songs of all time where you have to argue about it. It's just like generally these are the top 100, right? Like I'm guessing it didn't matter exactly if somebody was 88 versus 87 or on the list versus not on the list. You had a target list. You got a bunch of donuts. How many of those companies ended up being your clients?
It's a great question. I wish I had the exact number, but I would guess it was close to 50. in total over that 3-year period that became our clients. I could go back and tally it up now, but in the mix
But
of
it's
all
somewhere
that,
about
I wouldn't really keep it.
half-ish.
Yeah, I would say it was pretty close to half that list ended up being our customers within a 3-year period.
That's awesome. And it was all from, I don't know, a few hundred or a few $1,000s worth of donuts, and you driving around having fun being the donut guy. Like, that's a fun thing to do.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And again, it goes back though to, so that's one example, but the other is pick up the phone and call, right?
Yes.
Get to know whoever the person is there. Like today, so many people hide behind their phone, they hide behind their inbox. And at the end of the day, you're dealing with a human being.
Mm-hmm.
You're dealing with an actual human. And the best way to connect with humans, one would be face to face. The second best thing is, video call. Third would be phone. So
Right.
go in that order. Don't go the opposite way. I see so many people, they want to start with the easiest, the most convenient, but it's also the one that is the most unnatural in terms of the way we actually dialogue and connect with people.
Amen. I completely agree on that. And I think for someone who spent years doing all those wrong things and realizing that this was stupid, that there was really nothing to be afraid of, and it's actually a lot more fun to talk to people than it is to hide behind your email and your technological wizardry. If you're still in that boat, if I haven't been able to convince you yet, hopefully Wayne's going to convince you. So you got this lawn care business, you sell the lawn care business. Now you're getting inquiries from some of these other business owners about how to do their marketing. And so what kind of projects are you doing, if you can share some of the details? Because I love the details, the specifics of here's a different thing that you could be doing or thinking about.
Yeah, I think overall, so if I'm gonna paint like with the broad brush first, what I would say is this, that most people confuse marketing and advertising. They believe that they're one and the same. And so when they think about marketing, they're thinking about, oh, well, I'm running Facebook, or I'm doing television, or I'm doing radio, or I'm doing print. And that is only one component. So those things that we do, those are advertising pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But marketing is everything. So marketing is the way that you answer your phone. Marketing is the way the lawn looks when people walk up. Marketing is the smudges or the lack of smudges on your front glass door when people come into the business. Marketing is how long does it take you to respond to the email? How long does it take you to, go down the list? All of these things are marketing. So the very first thing that I would often talk with people about is that all of these things are marketing. Stop blaming the fact that you're not getting results from television or radio or et cetera, that your marketing isn't working. You've got other issues that you can address before you start blaming, the television, the radio, the print, whatever it may be. And so we would start with this mindset shift around the difference between advertising and marketing and how advertising fits under marketing. The other thing that we would do is we would talk a lot about creating what I would call evangelist, right? So I grew up down here in the South where evangelist often has a religious connotation. Maybe that's why the term sticks in my head so much, but other people would call them raving fans. And so the question would become, what are you doing to create raving fans for your organization? How are you nurturing those people differently than you're nurturing the people who you want to come in the door or the people who you want to do business with you? And you see, I from a very early age in the lawn care business, had this idea that if I could create evangelists, so bringing donuts created evangelists, sending clients birthday gifts created evangelists. So if I knew a client, first of all, I knew when their birthdays were. If I knew they love steak, we would ship them steak for their birthday. If I knew they liked whatever, we had this list, this database basically, and we would ensure that we were nurturing those relationships. We were building those relationships. And I think even today, I see this. I mean, we all know, all the data shows that it's infinitely more expensive to sell a new customer than it is to sell a previous customer to come back and buy again. And yet that's not even talked about when we talk about marketing. What are we talking about when we talk about marketing day? We're talking about what's the latest social platform? What's the latest hack? What's the latest guru saying about marketing? And instead, I always argue, like, if you ignore all these fads and you go back to the foundations, you will separate yourself. You will see results that other people simply don't see because they're so scattered. It's the shotgun approach. They're trying a little bit of Facebook, they're trying a little bit of email, they're trying a little bit of this, a little bit of that. They have no intention, they have no purpose behind what they're doing.
Now, so that all makes sense. How do we decide sort of what the fundamentals are that apply to us? I mean, some businesses, let's assume I have a question, because I'm going to assume that most people listening have a business that would support sending someone steak on their birthday, depending on what your average sales price is and so on. Your business may or may not, but I'm thinking most listeners probably do that. How do you decide sort of like what's the right amount of dollar value and trouble to go to nurture these relationships?
It's a wonderful question. And I would flip that question back to somebody, and then I'll give you an answer. But I'd flip it back and say, what percentage of those people that we're talking about, your customers, own a little device that they carry in their purse or pocket called a smartphone? It's virtually every single person. So what that tells me is that every single person carries a list of contacts. They carry access to social media where they can, in an instant, share with the world, their world, their social media world, what it is that you just did for them, right? The way you made them feel. Mm-hmm. So the way we do it now at our agency, so we try to practice what we preach. So we actually break our clients into A clients, B clients, and C clients. And then we have a whole nother tier that is only a few clients make this tier, but it's a special tier. And these are clients where we do something truly remarkable, truly amazing for them on an anniversary or on a birthday. And the way we look at it is we don't look at it strictly in terms of revenue. So if you think about the ABC clients, what we look at it is in terms of potential revenue they could either spend with us or refer to us. Mm-hmm. And that then determines where they fall in these brackets. Now, again, some people get all hung up and they think, well, is it more than 500? Is it less than 1,000? It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter because all of them are going to get something. So our C clients, for example, what we do for our C clients on their birthday. So these are our absolute lowest. In other words, they've barely spent money with us. They have little potential of referring people who would be good clients to us. We still send them a personalized email with a video of us wishing them happy birthday. So it's completely personalized to them. Now, what does it cost us to do that? Technically, a little bit of time. That's it. There's no cost. The B clients, we send every single one of them a birthday card in the mail, hand signed by everyone on our team with a small gift card. So $10 or less, depends, where the gift card's to, but $10 or less, Starbucks, etc. A clients, something completely different. And then I told you that top tier was only a few clients there. We do some pretty crazy stuff in that top tier.
And then that's a trade secret, I'm guessing.
No, I mean, we've done things from like hiring bands to show up at someone's office. We've rented billboards across town. We've had T-shirts printed and had everyone wear these T-shirts, and these persons show up at a local coffee shop for a meeting, and everyone's there to celebrate their birthday. So again, it's often about, it's true in any gifts that we get. The more personalized they are, the more thoughtful they feel, the more they mean to us. So it's not about dollars. Mm-hmm. It's about the way we make people feel.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, when you're telling your clients to market, presumably the way you do, one of the challenges that I can see is that a lot of marketing agencies get paid, for example, as a fraction of the ad spend or making some beautiful, complicated website, et cetera. You still got a business to run. So how does your business model differ maybe from the traditional marketing agency that is incentivized perhaps not to do exactly the right stuff?
Sure. So we are, our business is broken kind of into 4 different divisions. So on the actual marketing side, so that'd be social media marketing or traditional marketing, we are retainer based and it is a flat fee. So based on the scope of work that you're having us do, it's a flat fee per month. Now, there's some parameters around that. So if we're estimating it's going to take, I'm making this up, 50 hours a month, and we see over time that we're constantly hitting 70 or 80 hours, we're going to have another conversation that says, hey, based on what we thought you needed and based on what you need, it's a little bit different. We need to reevaluate. But the other thing that's super interesting about what we do, Ruben, is we do have legal contracts in place, but we don't hold anyone to a contract for any period of time. All we tell people is give us 2 months. If by the end of 2 months, you don't feel great about where we are and where we're going in this relationship, we no longer want your money. So 2 months, the reason for 2 months is it takes us about 2 months to get our feel for things, to understand how you operate, to understand how you do it. But by the end of 2 months, if you're not feeling great about the results we're getting and the direction we're heading, like there's no need to keep paying us. We would rather you take your money and go somewhere else. So in the marketing world, that is completely foreign. One of two things is going to take place in the marketing world. Typically, you're going to pay, a fee based on hours. So it's going to be, we're going to rack up hours here. Or two, we're going to lock you into a retainer, but it's going to be a 12-month, 24-month, 36-month long contract where even if you're unhappy, there's nothing you can do about it. You're stuck.
That makes sense. It makes a lot of sense for the buyer, and I can see how that's a compelling part of the value prop. At the same time, how do you show that things are going in the right direction when I'm guessing a lot of folks coming to you don't have a good positioning story, they're a mess, et cetera. Even if you get them leads, maybe they don't know how to close them, yada, 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 right? Like, how do you do this without sort of that traditional marketing agency client relationship where people are pointing fingers at each other?
Yeah, I love the question because it's so accurate. And for those not familiar with our world, what you described is completely accurate. So number one, we believe that our job is to educate people. So we have to educate our clients. So I can completely relate to what you're saying. We had a client not too long ago where we were generating a tremendous number of leads for this person, but they were complaining that the leads weren't panning out or nothing was happening. So we dug into it a little bit more and come to find out that they were sending one email to the leads and that was it. We'd captured phone number, we'd captured address, we'd captured email address.
Right.
And the only thing they were doing is sending one email that probably ended up in spam.
Right.
And then they were complaining that the leads weren't panning out. So a lot of it has to do with teaching and educating because they just don't know, right? Entrepreneurs, business owners are so busy and wearing so many different hats, keeping so many plates spinning that they don't even know often what's going on in sales or in marketing. So it's our job to help educate. And one of the things that's super, a dilemma that we often create is we often end up butting heads with people internally in these companies who have been doing a really good job of hiding, right? They've been hiding behind being busy. So yeah, they've been doing social media posts, they've been sending out emails or whatever it may be. But when you start shedding light onto, okay, we're doing these things, but let's look at the actual results. Let's stop looking at what we would call vanity metrics, right? Mm-hmm. Vanity metrics look good and they can make you feel good, but it's really just an illusion. It's a mirage. And so we want to get into what makes the cash register ring. For most of our clients, that's what they're after. They're after more sales and they want those sales to be profitable.
That makes a lot of sense. So how do you help people whose positioning doesn't really support marketing right away? Like they have to figure out who their customer is. And usually I feel like that's the first question the marketing agencies ask is, well, who are you trying to reach? And if you don't have a good answer there, well, nothing's really going to help so much.
The who is so important. But what I think is interesting is that sometimes if we put too much emphasis on the who and not enough emphasis on the true problem that we're solving, we get hung up on marketing to the wrong people. So for example, no one has ever come and bought something just because they're 45-year-old female and they watch certain TV shows and they drive a BMW, right? So the correlation and the causation are two different things, but we do love to start with understanding what job, and I use that term loosely, does your product or does your service solve for the person who buys it? So we want to start there. We want to get a clear understanding of why they're buying what it is that you offer, that you provide. We then move into what you were describing would be just a customer avatar exercise. We want to help them clearly define, and we get this pushback all the time. Well, we serve such a broad range of people, it's anyone from 18 to 95 years old, and we don't want to exclude anybody, but we walk them through the customer avatar exercise, getting crystal clear about the who is this person? First of all, what is the job? What is the problem or the desire that our thing is going to solve? Who are these people? And then this is the one, Ruben, that I think really so many people need to move to this next step. And we call this the magic journal exercise, the magic journal exercise. And it's simply this. We believe that you should know your customer, your ideal customer so well that imagine that they wake up in the morning, it's early in the morning, they go pour their cup of coffee, they stumble over to their desk, and they're going to sit down and write a page in their journal. And they open up the journal to what should be a blank page for the day, and the date's already written. And there's already a page written for the day. And what is written describes perfectly what they're experiencing in their life right now. It explains the family drama that they're going through. It explains the fact that they're worried about their son or their daughter. It explains how they're excited about the new promotion at the office or whatever it may be. So what we encourage people to do is go through and write as if you were writing a journal page from that person. Once you do that, if someone does that exercise and then they sit down and write an ad, it doesn't matter what you sell. One of our clients sells metal, like metal supply. The ad that they write after doing that exercise is so profound and so impactful versus sitting down and talking about, okay, we serve men between the ages of 35 and 55 who drive pickup trucks, right? Those ads feel completely different because we are now speaking to an individual and we are connecting at a human level.
And I imagine that same process works well to make sure that your website will resonate when that person hits it, your social media profile, your whatever, your 30-second pitch at the in-person networking luncheon you go to every week, et cetera.
Yep, absolutely. Again, at the end of the day, and that's why I'm so thankful for those Zig Ziglar CDs. At the end of the day, marketing and sales go hand in hand. And so much of the psychology of selling is the psychology of marketing, right? So, in my book, Full Circle Marketing, the whole full circle that I talk about is there's all these strangers out there who would be a good fit for your product or service. Your job, number one, is to move them to be friends with you. So you take them from strangers to friends. Well, how do you do that? You have to, number one, get them to know about you. Number two, you have to get them to like you, right? So in sales, knowing and liking are the first two steps in the sales process. So then how do we move people from friends into customers or into clients? The only other ingredient that's really needed is trust. They have to trust that the product's going to do what you say it's going to do, that it's going to be of more value to them than the money they're parting with, that your company's going to stand behind it, that you're going to stand behind it. So when we think about marketing, if we just shift back to those foundational pieces, in other words, what marketing campaign do I have that gets the people who I believe would truly benefit from my product or service to know about me? What's the campaign that I have that gets them to like me, right? Like my company, to understand who we are and what we represent. And then how am I going to get people to trust me? And trust is a whole another can of worms, but how do we run campaigns that get people to trust us as marketers, as entrepreneurs, as business owners?
Now, when you say campaigns, what are some of the things you mean? Because you talked about Facebook, Google, that kind of thing, and you talked about bringing donuts to people, which I'm going to remember for the rest of my days. But what are some of the other things that people might run that are considered campaigns?
Yeah, nowadays, I would say that there's tremendous opportunity in print. Direct mail, just tremendous opportunity in direct mail these days. So we've gone through this period where direct mail has shrunk back. So people love getting personalized things in the mail, right? Not junk mail, personalized things in the mail. There's tremendous opportunity in that right now. Those are campaigns. Again, radio, great right now. If you know your target audience, you know where they are, that's a great place to be. There's lots of things, and that's where we would dive into based on the who, based on the problem that we're solving. Where are those people at? Where do we go to put our campaign in front of them? Where do we go to put our message? So I think sometimes campaign can get a bit confusing. It's really the message. Where can we put that message so that the right people see it?
And the campaign is basically the delivery mechanism for that message. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. I like the box of donuts with the phone number on top. That is crystal clear. And I'm trying not to eat so many donuts. So, but I'm definitely going to remember if someone shows up with a box of donuts and has their phone number on top of the box, especially if I look out while I'm eating a donut and I'm like, oh man, our lawn looks terrible. Now, what are some of the things that people should think about when they put that message together? I think the lawn care business, one of the nice things about it is it's sort of like, if I look out at my lawn and it's crappy because the people forgot my stop this week, right? Then it's like, okay, great. for a lot of the sort of the more digital businesses, the expertise-based professional services businesses, things tend to, there's a lot of gray. And some of it, I think, does kind of fall back to the lawn care stuff, like this person doesn't return my calls. I can't tell you how many of my customers who tell me I can't update my website. My web developer went to Mexico and isn't responding. I mean, maybe it's because I'm in Texas. I don't know, but this happens way more than it statistically seems like it should. But what are some of those things that we should be looking out for in those sort of intellectual property type businesses that can help people craft those messages and then turn them into an effective campaign?
Yeah, I would say that, when you look out at the lawn and you see that it looks terrible, what you're highlighting there is the pain point. And the same is true in the digital space. The same is true in this age where everyone's connected. It's understanding when those pain points take place. Because when we understand that, we can then write our messages to resonate in that moment. So there's a great copywriter from way back, and I think it may have been Eugene Schwartz, but I may be wrong on who said this, but he said, enter the conversation that is already taking place in the minds of your prospects. So an example of that would be, let's say that your target audience, that they're men and they love NFL football. That's just ancillary things. Well, right now would be a wonderful time for you to write messaging around the playoffs, right? Because we're entering the conversation that's already taking place in the minds of our prospects. So what we want to look for things that are taking place that we can then tie our messaging to. And this is where it requires creativity, right? We have to be creative. How do you bridge that gap between what's taking place in their minds and what they're talking about and what we do? But it can be done. It's done all the time. We just have to learn to tie those two things together. And when you do that and you tie that back into the problem that you're solving, you immediately, in an instant, stand out from everyone else. Because you've just entered what they're already talking about. You've tied it to a problem that is real for them because you truly understand their pain points. And now you've positioned yourself as someone who can help them overcome that.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it also goes back to something you said earlier about we have to actually talk to people. Because if we are expecting to go hide in an ivory tower and come up with some stroke of brilliance, it tends to be really hard. At least I find that. Versus if I'm actually talking to the people who are really following the NFL playoffs, say, right, the net stuff's going to come up in conversation. They're basically going to write it for me.
Absolutely.
All right, awesome. So let's suppose that we're effective at doing this. We get some clients. How do we implement full circle marketing and turn these folks into evangelists? I love the whole, let's do nice things for them on their birthday, but what else should we be thinking about?
Yeah. Step number one is we have to get clear about their expectations. So in other words, when they buy our product or service, what does a reasonable person have the right to expect? And what we love to teach is what we call the expectation litmus test. And so what you do is you go down a sheet of paper and down one side, the left-hand side, you write down all the points that someone's going to go through when they purchase your product or service. So maybe they call, maybe they email, they go to your website, whatever it may be. Then they have it shipped, they check out. So you make a list of all the points of interaction. And then over beside that, you're going to write down, what does a reasonable person have the right to expect during this particular interaction? So if they're going to pick up the phone and call, a reasonable person has the right to expect that we're going to answer the phone within 5 rings. Okay, so the next question becomes, if we're going to exceed these expectations, what do we have to do? Well, we have to answer the phone in 4 rings or less. Now, the next part, and people think this is a waste of time, but I'll come back to why this is important. You also have to put down, what does it look like when we don't meet expectations? So if we don't meet expectations, we're answering the phone in 6 rings or more. So if you go through all your points of contact, email, how long do they expect for me to return the email? Go through this and you answer those 3 questions. What you now have is a sheet of paper that becomes a litmus test. You can hand it to someone in your office and say, hey, the next time someone comes to our buying process, I want you to highlight where they fall. Did we answer the phone in 4 rings? Did we answer the phone in 6 rings? You highlight it. You now have something that clearly identifies, are we actually meeting expectations? And here's why this is so important. Is Bain & Company did this study where they surveyed 4,000 small businesses in the US. And they went to the owners and they said, on a scale from 1 to 5, what level of service do you provide to your customers? So level 1 was terrible. Level 5 was phenomenal, world class. And there was the others in the middle. So they surveyed them all and it came back, and 92% of entrepreneurs, business owners, said they provided the highest level of service, 5 stars. Bain and Company, a very smart, very large organization, said something's not right with this data. They went back to those business owners and said, would you mind if we went and surveyed a few of your customers to ask them this exact same question? And they did. And of the customers of those 4,000 companies, only 8% of those customers said that those businesses provided a phenomenal level 5 service. So the point is this, the point is, as entrepreneurs, these are often our babies, right? Our business is our baby. We don't want to call our baby ugly, but sometimes someone needs to point out the harsh truth to us. We have to be the ones that do that, because chances are no one else is. What's going to happen is they're going to go tell all their friends and family not to do business with you because you don't return phone calls, or because you go to Mexico when somebody needs their website updated, right? So we have to get honest with ourselves. And that's why the example, the litmus test, that is the place to start if you're going to turn people into evangelists. Because if you're not exceeding expectations, you're not going to create evangelists. You're going to create merely satisfied customers. And look, there's nothing wrong with satisfied customers, but satisfied customers are not going to pick up their phone. They're not going to post on social media. They're not going to remember you when someone asks them about the problem that you could help them solve.
Now, it's a great point, and it kind of makes me wonder, just as a tangent, based on those percentages, if the 8% of the people who were really providing great service were the 8% of the businesses that thought they weren't, because they actually had some level of self-awareness about their business.
Yeah.
So
I would agree, probably.
I mean, I wonder if there's a data point in there if they release that. So what can we do? Let's assume that we are providing reasonable service. And I think there's a great analogy about the business as the baby. And one thing to remember is babies can be cute and we can love them, and they are not perfectly behaved. And no one expects them to be perfect, right? But it's kind of like you say, there's a set of expectations. And are you falling within reasonable expectations? Are you falling on the really high end of expectations? Or are you just bombing out completely, right? When the baby throws some Cheerios on the floor, not a big deal. Everyone understands that happens. And I think one of the things that I've found as a business owner that's been really amazing is when I F up, which happens regularly, unfortunately, if I call and explain and apologize and fix, people are amazed. Like they like me more than I did if I hadn't screwed up. It's almost like a perverse incentive, because most of the other organizations they do business with don't treat them that way, right? Like they don't acknowledge, they don't apologize. If they fix it, it takes months, blah, blah, blah. So just being human, as you were saying earlier, goes such a long way. Now, before we go, I want to ask you one more question. Like, let's assume that we've got this set of evangelists. How do we sort of activate them? How do we make the most out of them? Are there things that we can do, or do we just have to kind of wait for them to post on social or refer people to us?
Yeah, I think one of the simplest ways to do this, and again, this is not sexy and it's not some whiz bang technique, right? This is an old foundational thing. It's to call those people back and check in with them, and then ask this wonderful question. Hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to do business with us. I'm thankful for your feedback. I'm just curious, do you happen to know anyone else who's right now dealing with this same problem that you faced? And so what's so shocking to me, Ruben, is that people are afraid to ask other people for referrals. Mm-hmm. People are afraid to do that. I don't understand it. If you've taken the time to bring them through your funnel, your marketing funnel, you bring them to the point of the sale, you sell them, you provide great service, you exceed their expectations. Why are you so afraid to pick up the phone and ask them for the referral? And here's the amazing thing. They will often say yes. Most of them will say, yes, I'm happy to do that. But here's the other problem is most of the people weren't expecting you to ask that because they're not used to that question.
Right.
So we love to say, have a name of somebody who you want them to make a connection with when you call. Hey, after you ask the follow-up questions about how we did, ask them, I know you're connected with this person, or I know you do business with this other group. I think they may be a good fit for us. Would you mind connecting me with the owner or the whoever the decision maker is? That simple little question. Again, all entrepreneurs, all business owners will tell you that word of mouth referrals is where they get their best customers from. And yet we won't take the time to do this one simple thing to get referrals.
It's crazy, right? And I've been guilty of it myself. All the business is from word of mouth, and my strategy was basically prayer. And so that's not a good strategy. It's very stressful. And not only that, it deprives the people who need you of your help, right? You're not just limiting your own success, you're limiting the success of the people who desperately need what you have to offer. Now, Wayne, if people like what they're hearing, where can they find out more about you and Ugly Mug Marketing? Obviously, they can Google Ugly Mug Marketing because that's going to come up right away, but give people the direct links.
Yeah. Sure. The simplest place is our website. That's uglymugmarketing.com. All of our social media is linked there, email addresses, phone numbers, all of that is right there. And then, if you want to follow me personally, although it's mostly business stuff, I'm on Instagram at Fire Yourself. And there's two best places.
Well, Wayne, thank you so much. Thanks for restoring a little bit of sanity and common sense to the digital marketing world that tends to get a little wrapped up around the next shiny object. And amen for the marketing guy who says, hey, the thing you really need to do is pick up the phone and talk to people. Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. Drop an iTunes review or a review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you've got a friend who would benefit from this episode, let them know about it. If you've got a friend who wouldn't benefit from this episode, but you just haven't talked to for a while, now's a great time to give them a call. Thanks for listening. Until next time.